everyone. Welcome to the 298th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have a really busy show for you today. We're going to be talking about news from Samsung. Two pieces of news there. We've got a new Home Kit enabled doorbell. Wyze is launching home monitoring, and we've got a little bit of headway maybe on ISPs in the smart home. We're also going to be talking about Fuchsia and a hypervisor for the industrial IoT. Plus, lots of little news bits from the LoRa Alliance, Google, Apple, and Amazon. And our guest this week is Sudhir Arni, who is the Senior VP of Business Outcomes at Sight Machine. We're going to be talking about flexible factories, how your job will change in flexible factories, and how the pandemic is changing manufacturing and what it might mean for people. So, lots of good industrial news on that front. Plus, you're going to hear from our sponsor, Calyx, talking about bringing better networks to the smart home. Okay, so busy show. Let's get right to it with news from Samsung SmartThings and Google's Nest. Yay! We can all rejoice because finally, Google and Samsung are going to be working together finally. Samsung SmartThings platform used to work with Nest devices, but then Google killed off their Works with Nest program last year. And basically, we were all kind of stuck. We were like, now what do we do? Well, starting in January, you will be able to connect your Nest devices to SmartThings and be able to control and link them to a bunch of other things because of that connection.
Right. Yeah. So that with that integration, you'll be able to maybe trigger lights when somebody walks past the house or something, whatever you want to do. This opens up a lot of possibilities that we used to have, no longer have. And I think we're in the home stretch of the transition away from Works with Nest because this might be the second recent integration that I can think of with the new Nest stuff. So this is fantastic.
Yes. Also in the SmartThings world and ecosystem, we have news from AOTech, which is a company that makes lots of smart devices and sensors. I actually really like their sensors. I've used a couple in my life. They were usually Z-Wave sensors. But back in June, when SmartThings said, hey, we're going to switch off of Groovy, we're going to kind of lock down our platform a little bit, they also talked about getting out of the hardware business. So we're not going to see a lot of SmartThings outlets. I feel like I had SmartThings sensors. Instead, those are going to be made by AOTech. And we're going to be seeing lots of cool devices.
Yeah, and that would apply also to the hub side of things, because the Samsung SmartThing hub, which I guess has had 2 generations of hardware.
I think it's 3.
Is it 3? That could well be. I've lost track. They're not readily available these days. You can find them just a few places where you can find it. It's pretty cheap, $70 or so. But Samsung itself won't be making those hubs. And it looks like AOTech, as you said, is going to fill in the gap there on the hardware side. And I have so many Samsung branded things between bulbs and sensors and buttons and outlets, and all that will no longer be made by Samsung. But they should still work and all that. I'm not concerned about that. Oh, yes,
they're still going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just going forward. You know, you're not going to buy your SmartThings home hub or the gear really from SmartThings itself. SmartThings had always outsourced the manufacturer of, well, not always. I supported the original SmartThings Kickstarter, and that was actually their hardware. But, anyway, this is good news for people. It's pushing the hardware expertise to people who've always done it. It will hopefully, AOTech's a good brand. They make good sensors. They're familiar with Zigbee, Z-Wave radios. Yeah, so I'm excited about this. And just so you know, all of this is kind of going down in the beginning of next year. So this stuff will be shipping starting in the first quarter of 2021.
In fact, the Nest integration is in January.
Yes. So basically, it's coming. It's not quite here yet, but don't run out and try to redo your smart home right before the next year.
Like we do.
Like we do. I was like, I'm transitioning a lot of things to HomeKit right now. It's very fun. But we're also next year going to see Project Connected Home over IP, I hope.
You keep saying that, but
I do. They're making a liar out of me. I thought it was going to be this year. It's been a year. They were like before the end of the year, but no. Well, I mean, I still have a few more weeks left.
You have about 3 weeks left before there's a spec. Yeah.
All right. I might have lied to you all this time, and my hope may not have been rewarded.
It's not a lie. I mean, you know what? We don't know everything. We're not told everything in advance. I mean, and we do make educated guesses on things based on the information that we have that may not be known to the public at the time, but
I still think it's real, y'all. I still think this is going to be a real thing. But, you know, I have friends who are like, ha ha, Stacy. And I'm like, no, it's still real. Anyway. Okay.
I know what to get you for Christmas now, a Project Chip pillow.
I still think they're going to change the name. I still think it's
then by all means, I should buy it now.
Get it now. Get me a Project Chip mug. All right. Let's talk about HomeKit. So this is top secret, but I was so inspired by like the HomePod minis that I got, the use of Thread. I was like, let's test this out. And holy Hannah Croy, Thread, the Nanoleaf Essential Bulbs, when you use it through HomeKit, super fast. Just boop. On. The delay is not huge over Google when I try to turn things on, but I am impressed with the response time of Thread. So that's pretty cool. And as part of that, I'm trying to switch as much stuff as possible. And people who are in the HomeKit universe are going to be really excited because Logitech is announcing a HomeKit doorbell. And I don't think there's been a really great option for HomeKit in the doorbell side. So the Logitech Circle View doorbell is going to have face recognition. It is $199.99, so $200. The Circle View doorbell will also feature Apple's HomeKit Secure Video, which is where Apple takes all of the content from the camera, encrypts it, and then sends it to their cloud to do any sort of processing, so face recognition, all of this other stuff. Then they encrypt it and send it back to you. Not everybody does this. So this is, I mean, it's a nice looking doorbell.
Mm-hmm. Can I just say what my favorite feature is?
What is your favorite feature?
Wireless connectivity, both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands.
Wow, that is a really nice investment in a good Wi-Fi chip.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense because it's video. So nearby, the 5 gigahertz channel is so much better for sending high quality. And this is HD video. It has color night vision. So yeah, this is good. I'm not going to buy a new doorbell because
you have 5 already.
I have so many. I'm so done with doorbells. Plus, I'll be honest, I have a dog that's really very high strung. And so I know when someone's at the door, not that anyone is right now. So package theft, that sort of thing doesn't really worry me because A, everyone's home all the time because of COVID. B, the dog, the second anyone rolls up on the gravel driveway is like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm. I have the same situation, but I do like the fact that I can talk to the person through two-way chat through like a Google Home display.
Oh, that is okay. I can see that. I can see that.
I mean, unless your dog can talk to the person, this might be a good feature to have.
Yeah, I don't really talk to people, or I just open the door and step back with the dog. I have to step out.
COVID.
They back up. They back up. We're all good here.
All right.
Never mind. All right. So the Logitech Circle View doorbell, very exciting. It's coming out. We're going to be excited. Okay. Other news in the security space. Wise. Kevin, why don't you talk about Wise? Oh my God. It's this week. This is this week's Wise product.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So Wise has introduced their Wise home monitoring system and service. It is 24/7 professional monitoring, $5 a month. And they've got some door sensors, a little base station, a motion detector, a keypad. This all ships in February 2021. I ordered or pre-ordered the last Wise product last week, which was the Wise Watch. I did not pre-order this, but you can do so now, and you will see this in February 2021.
And the thing to note here is there are new sensors. They have a Wise entry sensor and a Wise motion sensor. People hated the last generation Wise sensors because a couple reasons. One, most people felt like they were unreliable over distances that made sense for most homes. So I tested mine in a small rental apartment and they were perfect. And I could actually go pretty far down the hallways. So I felt like they were great. But people in real homes were like, no. And then 2, when the battery dies, the sensor is dead. So Wyze actually pulled them from the market. So this is the return of Wyze sensors.
Yes. I should also mention if you have Wyze cams, pretty much any generation, they can be part of this system. That's not a problem. One thing I did notice, and I hope this changes, in the app, you'll get push notifications for critical events. And you can have that even when your phone's in do not disturb mode, which I think is super useful, right? But it's only for iOS, it says.
Oh, boo.
I hope that changes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, also, I should note that we're looking at when you look at the Wyze Home monitoring page, it looks like a Wyze leak sensor is also coming in 2021 and a temperature sensor. So, woo.
Sheesh. Well, we'll save that for next week when it comes out.
All right. Next up, Calyx, which is a sponsor of the show that you probably have noticed. They have partnered with Arlo, which is used to be Netgear's camera brand. They spun it out a while back. This is really interesting to me. So Calyx has partnered with Arlo to let their service provider customers. So Calyx makes gear for independent service providers. And they make the biggest thing I've been testing them is their Wi-Fi 6 routers, which you can only get if you have if you have a fiber provider that uses their gear. But they're really nice. The quality is good. They have software similar to many of the other router companies that says, hey, these are the devices on your network. Here's where they fall in. Here's how they're behaving. And, the nice thing for a service provider is the service provider can see it. Anyway, all of that is what they do. What they're doing is with Arlo, they're going to let service providers also offer connected cameras as part of a service offering. And I think this is really interesting because way back in 2012, 2013, when the smart home was getting started again, I should say,
from a mainstream,
from a Wi-Fi and Bluetooth standpoint, basically controlled by your smartphone, the ISPs were like, yeah, we're going to offer things. And then all but Comcast pulled theirs because they weren't seeing the uptake because it was a little complicated to install. So I really think this is kind of it's interesting because here they are getting back into it. I understand why ISPs want to offer you all of this. It's an additional source of revenue. If they control it a little bit more, they can prioritize those signals, for example. They can troubleshoot for people when things don't work, which does happen. But yeah, so I just thought this was interesting to see if ISPs were really getting back into this and if people really want their ISPs to offer them this service.
No.
And Kevin is a strong no. Okay.
Kevin uses a VPN from home, so the ISP can't sell his browsing data.
Let's talk about hypervisors. All right. Yeah, y'all are like, what?
Yay! It's hypervisor time! Yay!
Hypervisors. These are, let's just say broadly, stick a hypervisor on a computer so you can split the OSs that it runs. That is the simplest way to think about it. You can run bunches of hypervisors are the original, the OG technology behind cloud computing.
Okay, can I try? Hypervisors are very similar to virtual machines. The difference is a virtual machine runs inside a host operating system, whereas a hypervisor can host virtual machines it is the operating system in a sense.
Okay. His was more technically correct, but mine gives you more context.
Okay.
I like it. No, this is why we work well together, Kevin. Okay. So the reason we gave you that backstory that you may never, ever want or need to use again is because the Linux Foundation has said that its Acorn Hypervisor has its first commercial product. So a company called TT Tech Industrial, they're launching this hypervisor for industrial clients. And what it's going to do is it's going to let you take those programmable logic controllers the PLCs that sit and control your machines in manufacturing plants. It's going to let you host those on an Intel-based server, which is really cool because you're eliminating some of the physical hardware. It's going to be cheaper. You're going to allow more flexibility. So basically, this is exciting. And I know that most of us in the cloud world or in the computing world are like, hypervisors. I mean, those were invented in the 90s, the late 90s. We've been talking about these forever. But in the industrial world, they've only been really dealing with hypervisors for like the last 7 years or so. So this is big. This is exciting. That's why we're talking about it. Let us move on to mystery OSs named after colors. Kevin?
I'll take Fuchsia OS for 400.
Woo! That's the day's daily double.
Hey! So yes, Fuchsia, if you're not familiar with it, folks, is something Google has been working on internally for, I'd say, at least 4 years now. And they really haven't said what they plan to do with it, what devices it would go on. The only thing I've really gotten that made any sense was they're building their Fuchsia as a scalable microkernel. And it could be on super small devices, or it could run on any device, essentially. But we don't know what those devices are. So what they're doing now, if you knew where to look, you could find the Fuchsia code on GitHub. But now they're saying, hey, developers, start looking at this. Don't create a production app or put this on a production machine yet, but look and see what this can do. And they're putting out more materials for these developers now at fuchsia.dev. You can actually set up a Fuchsia emulator. And I know some people have done that, like on an Android tablet. What is it? I mean, it could be anything. It could be used for anything. A lot of people are thinking this will be maybe a replacement for Chromebooks or Android phones because of the whole Oracle Java thing. I don't know. I don't know. I'm curious what's going to come about with this.
Okay, yes. And I don't know what Fuchsia is. I'm excited by the fact that because right now, if you're talking about like super small microcontrollers, you're running like an RTOS, a real-time operating system. They're small, they're embedded. There's a million of them. And otherwise, you're running, some version of Linux or Android or iOS or Windows or I don't know, just a variety of other options at the higher end. So one that can scale up and down probably makes it easier to develop software that can scale up and down as we try to move computing into a way more distributed kind of fashion worldview. So I don't know. That's my hope, but I could be wrong and likely am, given how I
was going to say, I heard Project Chip is using Fuchsia, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Kevin. Sigh.
Sorry.
All right, let's cover some fun news. Google, look to speak. This is on your Android devices, and this is an accessibility program. It basically lets people look at a spot on the screen to control input. I've actually seen Comcast has an accessibility lab, and they work on this for their Xfinity Home stuff. So they have some stuff like this, but Google doing it will make it much more accessible for more places and more things. So I think that's exciting.
Well, I have another exciting bit about it, and I could be wrong, but I'm going to follow Look to Speak. That's the name of it, very carefully. I don't want to take away from what they're doing for people who may not be able to physically type on a keyboard or type on a screen or touch a screen for controls, because this is awesome for these folks. It's great that they can look, and the eye tracking from the camera of the phone can basically type out as they look around the screen. And it even surfaces like, I don't want to say smart replies, but it's kind of like their smart replies from Gmail, so they can choose from a bunch of responses. I have a whole different take on it, though, because if it works well, what would it be like when, say, your Google Smart Display, which can already see you and even recognize you, could just pop open a bunch of commands like it does today when I walk up, where it says good morning, or it says smart home, etc. If I could, without speaking, just virtually tap those controls and turn things on and off or do whatever I want with that without voice, just by looking at the right thing.
That's going to be amazing. And also, like we've talked about this, we've talked about gaze as a UI option. So where you look at a lamp and it turns on and you're like, turn this on. Or you look at your burner on the stove and it's like, turn on, instead of saying turn on left front burner, you just say turn burner to high, but you're looking at that one. So yeah, I'm excited. Now there's a lot that needs to happen there, but still fun.
Yes.
Okay. And in other news, the LoRa Alliance has enabled QR codes for zero-touch device provisioning. And this is important because if you are going to do a 1,000 sensor node deployment, you're not going to want to have an individual typing in all the credentialing. You're just going to want to like, boop, scan, go, boop, scan, go. So that's what this is going to do. It's going to help with LoRa. LoRa is really doing It's doing well in terms of we've seen a lot of activity this year around the networks that seem to mean that we could get low cost networks and thus expand the demand for low cost sensors in a way that feels possibly sustainable. So, yay. Other news this week on the Amazon reInvent conference that just keeps on going. They talked about machine learning, and there was a lot of SageMaker news. If you're a SageMaker person, you should probably go check out the Amazon blog because like 9 different SageMaker services. SageMaker is their analytics and machine learning platform. A lot of industrial users use it. But I just wanted to highlight a new service that they're launching, which is Lookout for Metrics. This is going to be in preview. The Amazon Lookout service is a machine learning service that lets you detect anomalies, and they've got it for like computer vision. I think they have it for some like industrial data flow. So Lookout for Metrics actually uses machine learning to detect weird anomalies in your business metrics. So this is kind of cool, I thought, as you know, so maybe it'll be like, oh, your revenue's all wacky. Or it could be, you know, I don't know. It could be lots of things. You could apply it to many things. That's the beauty of this service. Anyway, so that's in preview, which in Amazon speak is not general availability, but it means, you know, you can try to use it. And finally, for those of us who have Google Home speakers, like me.
Yeah, I was going to say, and also use Apple Music, which you'd think is not a high percentage of people. But they do have an Android client for Apple Music that I used to use all the time.
Yeah. So now you can use Apple Music on your Google Home speakers. Yay.
Yeah, it says it's rolling out today, the day we're recording this show. I just checked my Google Home app and I do not see it as a music service yet. But when Google says rolling out this feature, they truly mean rolling, like slowly rolling.
I mean, it can take up to like 2 weeks, maybe. I feel like I get everything within a week.
It depends, yeah.
All right. So there's so much news, but we're not going to cover any more. There's the Qualcomm Smart Cities platform unveiling. There's a new microwave from Sharp that talks to Madam A. Just so much, like it just feels kind of small. But, you know, that's okay. We'll cover it in the newsletter. So if you want, you can sign up to subscribe to the newsletter, Stacy on IoT, if you go to stacyoniot.com. Yay! Okay. Now it is time for the Internet of Things podcast hotline, which is brought to you by Very. Very is a fully distributed IoT engineering firm helping you get your biggest projects fully operational, on time, and on budget. Discover what Very's multidisciplinary teams can do for you at www.verypossible.com. And we should let you know that if you call and ask us a question, you will be entered to win December's prize, which is one of the assorted $99 smart speakers from Apple, Google, or Amazon. And yeah, that is this month's prize. Give us a call at 512-623-7424. This week's voicemail is from Rick, who is lounging in Hawaii. Or at least I hope you're lounging, Rick. I hope you're having a nice, warm Christmas December. Here's his question.
Hi, Stacy, Kevin. This is Rick from Hawaii. I was calling because I have a question. I just switched from the Ring Video Doorbell to the Nest Doorbell, and I love the Nest Doorbell. There's only one thing. I had a if this, then that recipe set up for the Ring Video Doorbell that if someone rang the doorbell, it would flash my LifeX lights, and I don't see a trigger in if this, then that for the Nest Doorbell to, like, if someone rings the doorbell. So I was wondering if you guys know any way that I could make that automation occur. So if someone rings my Nest Doorbell, then I can make my LifeX lights blink. Any way to do that? I appreciate it.
So based on what we talked about earlier in the show, he should be able to do this come January.
Yes. My thinking, and I confirmed this with the SmartThings folks, is that you will be able to do this with a SmartThings hub. The question Kevin and I have, and we can't tell you yet because we don't have the integration yet, is if you can do this with only the app. Theoretically, you should be able to do it with only the app.
I would think so. I do have an automation with a LifeX bulb here in the office. I think I mentioned a couple shows back with a window sensor on the office door. So when the door opens behind me, the light flashes red. So I know that nobody's sneaking up behind me. Obviously, you want to hook it up to the Nest doorbell. And as Stacy said, we checked in the SmartThings app. The integration's not there yet. And they did say January. So we'll cut them some slack on that. But we think it should be doable.
So my recommendation for you is in January, which is only a few weeks away, download the SmartThings app, see what you can connect. If you can't, then you're going to have to go the hub route. And, then you have to buy the hub. Sorry.
Well, yeah, the hub will be useful. And I found it recently for as little as $70. So don't pay full price or overpriced for it. Like some places are charging over $200 for it, which is ridiculous. But you should be able to find it. Yeah, $70. I think it's a good investment.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, Rick, we hope that helps you out. Remember, if you would like to be entered to win or just have us answer your question, give us a call at 512-623-7424, and you will be entered to win a smart speaker of your choice. Alrighty, that concludes this portion of the show. Please stay tuned for our interview with Sudhir Arni from Sight Machine, all about building flexible manufacturing. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Calyx, and I have Pam Ferguson here to talk to us. All right, Pam, can you start with telling me a little bit about Calyx?
Absolutely, Stacy. Calyx is 100% focused on enabling service providers of all sizes to deliver amazing experiences in the home. These experiences range from cloud-driven and actionable insights to systems and services. Our CSPs can deliver future-proofed, autonomous fiber networks that provide their subscribers with amazing experiences all the way to the connected devices you and Kevin talk about all the time in your shows. If your listeners want to find out more about Calyx, they can visit calyx.com/revenueedge.
So Calyx is enabling CSPs networks from access all the way to the end subscriber's home Wi-Fi network. What does the ever-increasing number of average connected devices in the home mean to Calyx?
As you're always reporting, there's no shortage of devices in the home. U.S. households own an average of 11 connected devices right now, including 7 with screens to view content. We saw Black Friday and Cyber Monday continue this trend, bringing even more devices into the home. And we are not even at Christmas yet. These stats in mind, Calyx is focused on enabling our customers to respond through cloud support tools and subscriber-facing apps that can support and manage that proliferation of devices in the home. Beyond CSP-focused tools, we offer tools to them as well for their subscribers. Our subscriber app, as one, offers parental controls, including device and application prioritization rules, to help subscribers manage access to their devices and their network. Everything for us is about setting the service provider up for success to manage the home network environment and make it a great experience for their subscribers.
So I understand you announced a partnership with Servify at your recent Connections event. What's that partnership all about?
Yes, we announced a partnership with Servify. They're a leading provider of advanced device management and protection services for all types of connected devices. This new offering will be integrated with our existing platform and our subscriber-facing Command IQ app, enabling our CSPs to offer an unprecedented level of support and peace of mind to their subscribers with device warranty protection. As a new addition to our application suite, or our suite of applications, the Servify offering will be pre-integrated and will be easily included as a new subscriber offering. We're pretty excited about bringing this to market in the first half of 2021 and further establishing the service provider as a central source of great experiences for their subscribers.
Thank you, Pam. Can you remind people where to go to find more information about Calyx?
If you work with a service provider, you can go to calyx.com/revenueedge. If you're an end consumer and want to learn more about our awesome Blast Wi-Fi 6 systems or our subscriber app, Command IQ, you can check out blastwifi.com, a site we created to help consumers understand our offerings and direct them to one of our nearby service provider customers.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Sudhir Arnie, who is SVP of Business Outcomes at Sight Machine. Hello, Sudhir. How are you doing today?
Stacey, really good to be on the show, doing very well. Looking forward to having our conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I challenge all of y'all listening. At the end of this, I think you're going to have the opportunity to rethink the way you look at your business metrics, which I don't know about you, but I think that's kind of a fun and eye-opening opportunity. So let's get this started. First, we should probably explain what Sight Machine does. Sudhir, you want to tell us?
Absolutely. So Sight Machine is in the business of making all the manufacturers around the world gaining an ability to use all the data that they have across their shop floor, across their business systems, or anywhere else the data might be, use it for business benefits, any sort of sustainability benefits, any sort of profitability metrics, whatever the business might be trying to achieve, we help them achieve those outcomes using the data that they have.
Got it. All right. And with that in mind, let's talk about data, because I always tell people that I think the IoT is really innovative, not because I'm just really stoked about sensors everywhere, but this idea of having a real-time flow of information that you can perform analytics on and react to is pretty awesome. It's kind of how humans move throughout the day, right? We see something, we say something, or we do something. And to give this to anything that surrounds us is really powerful. But I also think that it really changes the game for how a business should operate. So what I'd like for us to talk about is this idea that today, most companies really try to optimize around like productivity or yield or profits. And you typically choose, maybe 2 or 3, right? When you have all of this other information coming in, you can start to change that. So let's start with what your customers are doing today. What are they trying to optimize for?
Before we really talk about exactly what customers are doing, I think we should understand the landscape of what has been happening in the world of manufacturing for the last few decades. Manufacturers across the world have always been very good at the idea of continuous improvement. It's in their DNA. Manufacturing shop floor, people who work on the shop floor are always striving to improve the way they operate their operations. In the last 20 years, though, the idea of improvement, be it for productivity of their operations, be it for the idea of improving profitability or any kind of new areas which pertains to sustainability or anything else, all these areas have been thought about more and more, but the realm of possibilities in which you can make these improvements happen has changed quite a bit because of the advent of all the data that has been made available to manufacturers. Sensorizing of machines, sensorizing of operations has been a trend that has happened over the last 2 decades because sensors became extremely inexpensive. All the machine manufacturers, all the automation service providers, they made sure every sort of sensor was applied on a machine. Suddenly, in the last 20 years, manufacturing has gone from not having too much data to having a lot of the data, but not knowing how to use it. So our customers come to us, their idea of improvement has been across various business metrics, but the challenge they're running into is we want to improve, we wanted to go to next level of improvement. We have all this data, we don't know how to use it, we don't know what to do with it. We know there is something in the data that we can actually leverage, but we are not able to. That's the situation in which most of our customers are in right now.
So they've got all this data, they have a culture of improvement, and they're kind of like, what do I do with it? So we had this idea of doing the podcast because I had this wonderful conversation with y'all about optimizing for sustainability or bringing in kind of a new metric. And so just to make this very concrete for people, let's start with that. And this idea that as a factory, I can optimize for yields or productivity, but I can also start adding in this other metric. Can you talk to me about how your customers are thinking about sustainability in particular and bringing that in, if many are? I don't know.
No, that's definitely a theme that we see all across the world right now. Every manufacturer is thinking about sustainability, for sure. There are different aspects to the idea of sustainability. One, in a number of energy-intensive operations, sustainability has been all about we are consuming a lot of fossil energy-related resources. We use the energy and then emit a lot of CO2 in our operations. How can we become more sustainable in a way that the CO2 emissions, those come out of our operations, can be reduced and we can be more efficient at how we produce our products? Most of these manufacturers know that completely going away from the fossil energy sources is not a switch that they can just hit on and it changes overnight. That's hard to do. So they are exploring the idea of making operations more efficient by leveraging data that they have, by thinking about analytical techniques, by thinking about real-time visibility and measurement of their operations to reduce the CO2 emissions. That's one aspect of sustainability that we see, especially in the energy-intensive industries. Another angle that we are seeing more and more is the aspect where consumers of manufacturing companies are asking for products made out of sustainable material, products which have the ability to be recycled more and more. That's the other aspect where a lot of customers come to us. They tell us, although we have a bunch of customers who want these sustainable products, but the segment is not large enough that we can dedicate a whole factory just to make these sustainable products. So we end up making those products, but the cost of making them is much higher because the volume is not as large as the conventional products that these manufacturers are used to making. So the challenge that comes up in their operations is, how do we make a small batch of sustainable products, which is customized to a specific segment of customers, then make another small batch of another sustainable product specific to another customer segment on the same manufacturing line, because they don't want to dedicate a whole line just to one specific product since the volumes are not high enough. This results in the challenge of how do we have operations in our manufacturing setup where we make smaller batch of products with multiple changeovers throughout the day, yet not lose the efficiency at which you are operating. Data comes into play there. The idea of flexible manufacturing operations where you can have multiple changeovers all the time to make smaller batch of products, that is something that can really be addressed leveraging all the data that all the manufacturers have today.
Okay, so those are two very different things. My idea was helping people understand how to think about optimizing for different metrics. But what you're also saying is now, once you do that, you have the ability to actually create many different product lines and use data to basically parse out your operations very small. So let's stick with the first for now and then go to the second. So if I am a company who is now put these sort of IoT systems in and I can start seeing the data, how do I decide on what other metrics to optimize for? And once I've decided on something to optimize for, how do I figure out how to bring the data to bear? Do I need to hire a data scientist?
That's a really good question. And this is something that most manufacturers are grappling with right now. Historically, when I say historically, I really mean in the last 5 years, when the whole idea of artificial intelligence and machine learning analytics started taking shape more and more in the world of manufacturing, most of the manufacturers at least tried to go and hire a few data scientists because they thought the problem that they were trying to solve for was having the right expertise from a building analytics point of view, leveraging the world of AI and ML, go and solve for specific use cases, go and think about specific metrics, and that would create value for them or that would change the way they run their business. That's where it started. A lot of manufacturers tried that. It did create a lot of value for sure, but in very small pockets. If you hire a data scientist in manufacturing and ask the data scientist to go build a specific application that improves the quality of your product at one manufacturing line out of the 500 lines that the company might have, you will solve the quality problem on that manufacturing line. But if you try to replicate the same thing across the remaining 499 lines, you will have to write that application again from scratch. This is not a scalable approach. That's where the world of manufacturing got stuck with, because they did not solve the real problem, which is the chaos that has been created because all the different kinds of sensors, all the different kinds of homegrown business systems that have existed, and the data harmonization has been the biggest problem. A good way to start the journey is to think about what all data do I have? What are the business levers that I'm thinking about? Which business levers are the first 2 or 3 that I want to go solve for to get very immediate ROI by using my data? Once you do that, then you think about what are the different business levers that you're going to go after. But you need to start the journey by taking stock of all the data you have. How are you going to build a data foundation, which will be leveraged to solve a few problems for ROI, and then go and solve many problems after that.
So when they're trying to do this, how do you make it as easy as possible? And how do they test this sort of thing? Like, once you're committed to this, once you've started building models that you think might work, what does that process look like in implementation?
So this is where the whole idea of business outcomes becomes extremely important. So you'll notice that in my title, the idea of business outcomes is something that Site Machine as a company, we take it very seriously. We've realized that to make a journey in manufacturing by leveraging the data on the shop floor to create business value is not a problem of technology alone. It's not a problem of software alone. So where do you start? How do you start? So the approach we take with our customers is we understand their manufacturing footprint. We understand their business objectives. We connect the idea of what do you do in your manufacturing footprint so that manufacturing becomes more of a competitive advantage for the business. While we take stock of everything across the manufacturing footprint, we then start honing in on 2 or 3 factories, maybe 5 factories out of the whole network that they have, which are going to be the biggest value drivers for the whole network. For those specific 3 to 5 factories, we try to understand their business process, their manufacturing process. We also try to understand what data sources they have. Then we work with that customer's manufacturing team, their IT teams, and their finance teams, bring them all together, align them on the idea of productivity improvement at 2 to 5 factories. We align with them on about, let's say, 5 use cases, which would be most value adding for those 3 to 5 factories, and also align with them on the data sources and the data points. Those will be required to make these use cases that we've identified a reality for them. We define a program, we work with them to build the data foundation that is needed to solve for these specific problems. It takes about the first 4 to 6 months to get things up and running, start showing them this is how you use your data, and start creating value for them.
So let's move to kind of the second point that you had brought up earlier, which was this idea of small batch manufacturing. And I would love to see if you have any customer examples of anyone trying to do this, and maybe they were optimizing for recycled materials, maybe they were optimizing for something else. But can you share anybody who's actually doing this?
Absolutely. So when we look at the manufacturing levers, Stacy, and this is the standard levers that every manufacturer looks at, they are either trying to improve throughput, or they are trying to improve quality, or they are going after their variable cost metrics, such as energy cost or material cost that they want to improve. The fourth lever that a lot of these manufacturers are always thinking about is the idea of flexibility. We work with a packaging company, a large paper-based packaging company, multi-billion dollars, one of the largest in North America. Their CEO, ever since we started working with them, he just told us one thing. He said, my vision is to have a bouquet of factories from which I can pick and choose whichever factory makes most sense to go and produce a product at, I will go and produce there. Decision-making need not be based on, I have 50 factories, and I'm planning things for each factory individually. Instead, I want that bouquet to be available, and I make decision across the bouquet at any point in time based on whatever makes sense. He was looking for this idea of flexibility. As part of their business, they have a number of factories where the final processing of the product is done. They are beginning to see more and more demand coming through for sustainable, more recyclable packaging materials being made that the consumers are asking for. And they are struggling with exactly the same problem that I mentioned. The demand is coming in, but since it is extremely personalized, although it's sustainable, but consumers are looking for personalized, sustainable products. So when it's personalized, they are demanding products in very small numbers. So this company right now is exploring the idea of using data to be able to do multiple changeovers in a day on a given line to keep changing the product that they make in small quantities. And they've been able to see some success.
What have they done on the process side? Because when you introduce flexibility, you also introduce more decision making, right? And so how are they changing just the overall formation of their business and maybe the jobs that people do as part of this increase in flexibility?
It's a very, very interesting question, Stacey. And again, very early days for data to be used and flexibility to be introduced in a large-scale manner. The customers we are working with, for them also, it's very early stages. But your question is right, especially if you are beginning to make decisions on the go of running a specific batch for 15 minutes instead of 24 hours that you were used to in the past. It requires a slightly different skill set from the people on the shop. It's very possible that you are beginning to think about planners' job on the shop floor being much more critical and important than what it used to be in the past. So these are things which are beginning to come up, but early days. But one change you see potentially coming, and we've started talking to a number of customers, is this idea of remote manufacturing operations. A few decades back, the way shared services centers started taking shape for HR and IT and finance, it seems like the timing is now pretty appropriate for manufacturing operations to be thinking about some sort of shared services operations, especially in this world of flexible operations that companies are looking for. It's very possible that you don't need schedulers and some of the maintenance coordinators and a lot of other data scientists and data engineers that companies are thinking to hire. They don't have to be at the manufacturing location anymore. You could have a shared services center, maybe which is supporting 10 different manufacturing plants in the region that you're operating in, and you have a team of people, including schedulers, planners, maintenance coordinators, data scientists, and maybe some software people actually sitting together and working remotely, building new applications with the expertise that's in the room and supporting operations of these plants in a much more data-driven manner. That's something that we've started having conversations about, and that could potentially be a future that manufacturing is moving towards, especially accelerated by the current pandemic, because it is top of mind for a lot of companies.
Yes, I agree. This sort of flexibility is tough. So then going forward, based on, what we've talked about today about different metrics, how you start to implement different metrics, and how you make your operations more flexible, what would you say the biggest challenge is for manufacturers going forward?
I think the whole transformation that manufacturing is going through right now, the idea of Industry 4.0, the biggest challenge is still going to be bringing different functions together to make this a success. Manufacturing usually has operated with the expertise of people who know production very well, people who know process very well, people who know machines very well, assets, asset reliability and maintenance. Manufacturing has historically not been run because someone knew how to use a piece of software to optimize things. We've reached a stage now where neither CIOs nor the COOs who are running manufacturing operations know both the worlds in the same amount of expertise and skill set that's required to actually learn these areas. CIOs know software and IT very well. COOs know manufacturing very well. It's no longer going to be a real technology issue. It is still going to be a big organizational challenge unless CIOs and COOs and the organizational structures, the way they're defined today, are changing in a way that the collaboration and cross-functional work happens more and more. Transformation, leveraging data on the shop floor is not going to be easy because it requires data getting, let's say, on the cloud, which is the CIO's domain. It requires the process knowledge to make the data usable, which is the manufacturing domain. It requires the idea of data being structured in a way and being accessed in a way from the cloud, which is seamless both for IT and operations. Unless these changes happen, the organizational thinking moves towards getting IT and OT together. I think it's always going to be challenging to make this transformation real.
Yes, we spend a lot of angst and cycles on IT-OT convergence, so I will agree with you there. All right, well, Sudhir, thanks so much for coming on the show this week. I really appreciate it.
Stacey, thank you so much for having me. Really good to talk about these topics. Really appreciate the time.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at staceyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.